the paper in detail. As I said, you've seen it before and it's been signed off before. To note 3 changes. One is the addition of a flow chart, which is really just to help people understand the process, because it can be quite complicated when it's all written in words. So it just seems to make sense to be able to help people to understand the flow of the sort of the decision making process through and the appointment process. The second is the terminology. So we have just made it easier to read and understand. There's always with HR, and there's the potential for quite a lot of jargon, so we've taken that out, and that was part of the evaluation of the last change that we did and some of the feedback that we had, so we were able to incorporate that. And the third change is around the criteria for slotting in or competitive slotting in and ring fence competition, to only allow eligibility to the same band or the band below rather than the band above, which seemed a strange anomaly if you weren't successful in those original rounds to be able then to gain promotion. So those are the 3 changes at this particular point. There has been a refreshed EQI as part of that process, because obviously we've made those changes, so that's also attached to the back of the policy. And that's it.
Thanks, Jo. I think it's important to say at the start, you know, you've come into the organisation, baptism of fire really, to have to come straight into reorganisation as well as trying to do the role of Chief People Officer for the system. And I have to say your communication around it has been excellent. Same with Shane, same with the rest of the exec team. People morale is low. I think within the ICB staff there's a massive degree of uncertainty, which is to be expected. But I think we're doing the right thing, and perhaps other ICBs aren't in the same position as us, and some maybe not moving at the same pace as us. But I think we're doing the right thing, and it's a helpful update. And there's again, I would say particularly for the NED members, there is a regular update on that all the exec directors are doing to their teams, which you can join on Teams. And also Shane does a regular update weekly on Have I Got News For You? I think that's what we call it.
Have we got news for you?
Have we got
I don't
news
want to
for
end up
you?
getting sued.
Yeah. He does it in the style, different style each week. He does the style of Ian Hislop, and then not quite the same humour on it. But,
it's not bad.
I don't know whether there's anything else you want to add on that, and then I will throw it into questions if any you've got any. But it's a significant programme.
And the policy is what it is. We're just going to make sure the policy is in the right place for moving forward. So the policy is there, and we as execs support it strongly. Any
comments or questions? People happy to proceed. Ellen?
Yeah, just to say, I think I sat on one with Jo, the CNO, and it was very transparent. It was very so from a workforce perspective, I would imagine that there's positive feedback in terms of the openness of the organisation. Is there anything else you can add in terms of the feeling of the organisation, the workforce?
Yeah, I mean, to Jeff's point, morale is really low because this is the second change that people have been through, third change if you think about all of the CCG messaging ahead of that. We have really learnt the lessons from the last transition, which I think has been really helpful, demonstrating that quite significantly. Got great relationships with the Staff Partnership Forum and the Staff Network, so there's a two-way flow of communication in every facet of the organisation, and these are difficult messages, and we've sort of taken the approach that it's about being as comfortable with the uncomfortable as we can possibly be, and being as open and transparent with staff. And some of that is difficult. You know, we are talking redundancies, we are talking, you know, voluntary exit, potentially compulsory exit. We aren't the only ones, but I think it's also important that as execs we also are hosting drop-in sessions. Every exec has done that. It hasn't rested with HR or with finance. It's, you know, it's been something that's been a shared endeavour, which I think has been really helpful. And the staff know and appreciate that element, but also the fact that we are pushing up. You know, we are saying regularly to region and to NHS England in a wider sense, you know, you're really destabilising us as part of this. This is really challenging. You know, there's a slowness in the decision making. The support is minimal, and there is, you know, we could do with more. So there's a constant sort of flow of two-way information, and I think that's what staff appreciate, even if the message is difficult.
Thanks, Jo. Any other comments or questions, Jo? Okay, we're doing well for time, which is good because I know some people do need to go. We've got the committee update, so yeah, I mean, we are happy to agree that, I'm presuming, yeah? Yeah, okay. So we've got the committee updates. I'll start with the chairs and then to exec members by way of update. So Ellen, do you want to start us off with outcomes, performance and quality?
Yeah, we'll do. A significant change for the Outcomes, Performance and Quality Committee is that we move into bi-monthly, but the positive action from that is that we are aligning ourselves a little bit more with the PCC committee. So Alison is joining my committee and I'm also joining there. So basically we're looking at outcomes, performance and quality across primary care as well as the rest of the system. So that's a real positive. And to Jeff's earlier point about, and Maria's point, she's gone, that sniff test or that sort of asking more difficult questions, you know, it's reassuring for me to have Alison on my committee, and Alison has said the same thing about that. So I think that's a real positive move. The second really positive piece of work is the performance reporting that Alison and I had an update with Lisa and with Deb. The team have done a great job, Deb, which I think we fed back. The NEDs gave some sort of feedback that we didn't just want it to be performance reporting for outcomes, performance and quality and primary care. We wanted to touch on workforce and finance and the rest of the organisation so that we're all looking at the same data. So that was a really good update, and I think it's going live around October, November time, Deb?
Yes, it is,
Yeah.
and there's a roadmap that kind of kicks off some of the other things. Just in context of the organisational change, we are trying to be prudent in terms of managing expectations so that with the change going on, we know that we can't accelerate in the way that we would do normally, so we just need to be mindful of that. So there is a roadmap which we're really happy to share. We'll go through it, like I said, with the execs next week, and then we can kind of publish the roadmap so that everyone's aware.
So I'm keen for the NEDs as a group to see all that sort of stuff. In terms of our committee, we met in July. Again, I think we've talked about urgent care and the improvement in performance. I think Shane has sort of talked about that, as Jeff has today. And it's really key that we learn the lessons from that improvement that we've got in terms of urgent care. Other areas of positive performance is 111 abandonment rates, same day emergency care and ED, and improvements in some of the no criteria to reside, even though we know we've got continuing sort of challenges as we head towards winter. We've rehearsed industrial action, so we've talked about that in a bit of detail. The one positive feedback that has come through to the committee is the way in which the system has come together to respond to the challenges of industrial action. So that's all partners coming together and working really well, again, upwards with the region as well. We've mentioned earlier some challenges with cancer, but there's an awful lot of work going on in that area, as with elective care. So they're the key points. We've also received a Safeguard annual report, an update from the Deputy CNO within Safeguard on the strengthening of your team, Rosie, which is really good news. We talked about virtual wards, which we had a really good update, and I'm not sure whether at this point you just want to come in with a little bit more detail on virtual wards and where we are at the moment. So.
Sure. So Dave and I think, are going to do a bit of a thing between us. So my lead is currently on annual leave, but I've been getting an update from the organisation. So I believe we're at 120 capacity currently. Target was 160. We think we can get to 130. But certainly within the organisation, we're pushing the boundaries to understand what capacity is in relation to that. I think there's some really good working across the different partners involved in looking at that it isn't about just discharge from hospital out into, it's how do we prevent those admissions in the first place. So overall, we've got some recruitment challenges obviously in terms of vacancies, and again within, as well as working with partners, looking at what we can do in order to speed up where we have recruits, you know, the onboarding process, in order to be able to see if we can close the gap between target and where we think we can get to. So there's some good work happening.
So the reason that we've just raised that is virtual wards. I think Sue mentioned earlier on, Sue, it wasn't just about beds, so that whole virtual ward is really key. So the committee's keeping a sort of close brief on that as well.
Yeah, and just that's absolutely, yeah, development of the virtual ward programme or hospital at home will be a key part of our winter plan, which we discussed earlier. We recognise that the capacity and utilisation of what we've got isn't where we want it to be.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we are working with the team closely to put that robust improvement and onwards trajectory plan in. We're also part of a regional improvement programme to really maximise uptake through the winter.
Okay, good. So great to have you on board and to sort of have to hear the passion to really sort of move this forward. So I was really encouraged by that.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Lisa and Rosie, whether you've anything you've got to add or elaborate on?
The only thing I just wanted to flag to the board is the impact the industrial action is having on our elective recovery, and the fact that whilst we have a number of patients who are cancelled, we actually, once we get start dates of the industrial action, we no longer book into those dates. So that's having an impact on both our long waiters but also our cancer performance, which is obviously driving some of the deterioration in our performance, particularly on elective care. That was the only thing I wanted to highlight to the board.
Okay, and you know, I know we discussed it this morning, but that's something we need to make sure we keep our eye firmly focused on. Okay, thanks, Lisa. Rosie, anything to add?
No, nothing specific in committee, thank you. I think Alan's covered it all. And I missed the last committee on leave anyway.
Okay, thanks, Rosie. Any questions or comments for the Outcomes Committee? No? Okay. People Committee then, Jane.
Right, so July was jam-packed when we had our ICS committee. You'll probably see from the minutes that there was a lot packed in there. We did have a good level of assurance and scrutiny from all of our committee members. We covered workforce monitoring, temporary staffing, the EDI improvement plan, NHS staff survey system report, loads of things to do with people programme updates, and we also had a deep dive on workforce supply to look at international recruitment and new roles and apprenticeships, retention. There was a lot that we covered, but we also obviously moved to our new regime where we get hold of decent data across workforce in conjunction with finance. Obviously this time round you've had a report and you've been able to see the minutes. Next time round it won't be that way because we are getting the data pretty much hot off the press every single time. That said, we are monitoring that every single time when we have a people committee for the ICB and the ICS, so we're not taking our eye off the ball, and we will be bringing much more comprehensive reports as we go along. The EDI improvement plans, there are 6 high impact actions that have been outlined, and you'll probably see them from the notes. It's an ongoing thing, and especially given that budget cuts and not being able to look at where we're going for funding when we've got fixed term contracts in place, we will have to look at that and make sure that we don't take our eye off the ball. Also, we received Site of People Programme project initiation documents, PIDs. It always sounds weird when I say it in my head, which was required by NHSE and HE to release the workforce development funding. So we had 3 successful PIDs, if you like, that covered EDI and workforce planning and leadership development. But we've got 2 more that we're waiting for to hear. I think we had allied health professional development that was successful, and GP training hub, which is another one that we're waiting to hear from. And that's kind of it.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Jo?
No, nothing to add to that. It was a jam-packed session, and it is really the level of rigour and scrutiny that we will be bringing from here on in. We did include a number of papers with the minutes because actually I felt it was important for those to be shared as well. We did take a report on the NHS staff survey results for the system. It's from October 22, but it was a signal that as we move into the staff survey timing for this year, we will be looking at it from a system perspective as well as in an ICB and obviously as individual partner organisations. So that'll give us a really good sort of lens on that sort of cultural BNSSG awareness. And only a thing to note is that we are due to host a long-term workforce plan roundtable for system senior officers as part of our long-term workforce planning, planning. So yeah, and that's at the end of September.
Yeah, which is also clashing with this with the Bristol City Council roundtable, which is on city workforce issues. So we have a crossover between the two, and we'll hopefully be able to bring back some of the learning between them.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Any comments or questions from board members? And just to reassure, to reinforce with committee chairs. this is always your opportunity to bring anything you want to escalate up to the board into this session as well. So I'll repeat that so that we do, if you can't deal with them in your committee session or you feel they need to come to the board, this is the place to do it in your update. Okay, brilliant, thanks. Thank you very much for the update. Finance, I know estates and digital, I know we covered a lot of the ground already, Steve, but do you want to start us off?
Yeah, and the papers are in the pack. Chair, for information, the committee meeting minutes and also Sarah's dashboard report, she might want to go into that. I just want to remind, I guess, the board that it's finance, estates and digital. Sometimes we just get locked into the finance, it feels. But what we're trying to do across the piece is to manage this year, and the most important message for this year is, as a system, we have to deliver our financial promises, really, across our system. And we've been working very closely with the finance leads, the directors of finance in each of the organisations to assure ourselves that they are absolutely in the same place, working with Sarah and the team. The delivery of those savings is essential because that gives us then permission and headroom for the following years. And so in the committees, we've been looking at both the in-year and then we've been looking at the future in terms of our financial plans, and Sarah might say something about that in a minute. The second thing I just add is that we're also beginning to look at the initiatives and transformations that we want to deliver. Many of them require investment in digital and change in our business processes in order to support that investment. So increasingly, we're getting into a place which is around capital that's required in order to support digital, to deliver hospital at home and all of the things that we know we have to do. And finance clearly is an important part of that, so we need to create the headroom to invest for the future. And the final point I'd just say is that our estates, clearly RAC is on everyone's mind at the moment, and we are working with organisations, that's their responsibility to look, but we'll have an overview, I suspect, an emerging overview about whether or not we have got risk. But all of those things, when we think about the medium-term plan, our estate, our digital infrastructure, our people, workforce, and our finances all come together. And I think increasingly, we as a board and committees need to start thinking about how do we move stuff through our committees that give us that bigger view about where are we trying to get to, and engaging with all members, so our unitary authority colleagues, around ensuring that we're working together to deliver that future, because the financial pressures, whether it's in unitary authorities or whether it's in the NHS or other parts of public sector, are not going to improve quickly. So we're going to have to find different ways of delivery in order to meet need. And that's our biggest challenge, I think. How do we get onto that page as we're dealing with the fairly sticky stuff we're trying to deal with now, just operationally to deliver the here and now. So we're making progress, but that's the big plan.
Just thinking out loud, I mean, that might be a helpful, repetitive, constant question that we ask at the chairs meeting. So when we meet as the chairs, bi-weekly meeting, that we ask that question about what are the themes coming through your committees that need to be dealt with either across committees or in a different way. And it might well be then that comes into the board in some shape or form, maybe in this update or maybe in some other form. But yeah, it's a good challenge, Steve. Otherwise, we will never take that step.
We won't do it. No.
Okay. Ellen?
Yeah, I just want to endorse that, and I think you're right in terms of committee chairs. Something happened in my last committee, and Sarah came. I think you're coming to each committee now, and Dave was there as well. And that read across was so important because Sarah highlighted something obviously really important within your committee that hadn't really raised its head in my committee. And I think having that read across was so important. And equally, Steve, I think whether, if we can make the time, I think we should come as observers to perhaps some of the finance committees, because I think it would probably give us a slightly different perspective.
So of course, the ideal model would be all exec members go to every committee and all NEDs go to every committee. And however, from the start, I've tried to say, as NEDs, you're only remunerated for so much, and our exec team have got a busy agenda to deal with, we stick them in all of the committees, and that's all they'll do is committees. However, you can see what the value is of read across and conversation. So I've tried to create the mechanism with the NEDs, where we bring the NEDs together, we have a conversation, and I try and attend all the committees as much as I possibly can to ensure we have some consistency across them. We need to make sure the same is happening.
We do that on a Monday now?
Yeah, so we
So we
exec
do that
level.
on Monday, where we have the same thing. We come together specifically on a Monday to look at the committees, what's happening, what's going on. So we are doing that because we can't, as you say, not everyone can be every committee, so we are doing that as well.
And as Deputy Chief Exec, I've agreed with Shane, I will try and get to as many of the committees as I can to try and give that read across.
And it's never going to be possible to do them all, Sarah, but I just think the more you do that, and the more it makes us more fluid as a team. And I think the other thing is we haven't got an agenda item about board development on the table today. I think that's going to be a really important thing for us as we go forward. And so when we start to talk about seminars and we start to talk about the things that we'd like to do collectively as a board, there may also be some stuff that we do as execs and non-execs, which are not full board. Because some people here might think, I'm not really sure I need to do all of that. We've done one of those sessions. I think that worked quite well. So we might need to make sure that we mix and match on that rather than trying to get everybody in at the same time. Not trying to exclude people, but I'm conscious of diaries. Was there another hand then? Dominic, sorry.
Just a thought. We're trialling something in our own organisation that we've borrowed or stolen with pride from elsewhere, which we think might be helpful, which is a framework that some of you may have come across, which is called Assure, Alert, Advise. So our committees now say, assure, we were assured of the following, and they list the things they're assured of, so they're providing assurance up. Advise, these are the things that we did, but you just need to know that we did them and there's more coming or whatever. And then alert, you need to know or do something, and that can either be an upwards referral or a horizontal referral. And it puts a structure in, which means there's an underpinning process to facilitate those sorts of conversations that you're talking about. We're only a couple of months into the trial, so I'm not going to say it's a panacea, but it's an interesting experiment.
It's a good idea, and it's something that I've asked the NEDs to do, to say, you know, at the end of each of your committees, what are the things we need to escalate by way of assuring the board, informing them, or escalate for the board to make something. But I actually think that's quite helpful, isn't it? Assure, alert, advise. I mean, I think as any chair, you would look at what am I trying to do with this agenda item? Are we making a decision, or is it advising people, or is it informing them? What are we doing? But the structure sounds like you can't go wrong with it, I don't suppose. You know,
That's what we think.
that sounds a good idea. We will do something similar. Okay, with
Can I just
finance,
pull out
I was
a
going to say,
couple of-
I was going to say, Steve, as long as you've finished.
No, I finished.
Okay.
Sarah's
Yeah,
got
Sarah.
bits, yeah.
There were just a couple of things that I wanted to pull out of the system. Finance report, there's sort of four key issues that I think the board should be aware of. The first of them is that you'll see in the month 4 report, it looks like we're significantly off plan. We have had guidance about the change to the regime around elective recovery to take into account industrial action for April. It is very complicated and we are working it through, but we do think that it will mitigate that gap. But I think we're meeting as Directors of Finance tomorrow, and we will be considering then whether we need to escalate to the national team to say this is too complex for us to be able to give the proper assurance to our boards, because that is our concern, is we don't want there to be any things where we're making assumptions that actually might then cause an issue later on if it doesn't turn out to be that way, because it is very complex because of the fact that the targets are being changed partway through the year, and we're in September and we don't have any visibility of the change to the targets for the June and July industrial action. We know we've got more coming. So that's one thing. In terms of the other areas of pressure, we have got significant pressure on CHC, and Rosie and her team are working through an action plan to mitigate that. So at the moment that's being offset, but it's being offset by in effect non-recurrently using the money that we've set aside as a board for anticipatory care. So that's not where we want to be, so that work's going on. And then on savings delivery, we are also just doing some more work with a couple of organisations about where we are in terms of the recurrent savings delivery, because particularly recognising the importance of that in terms of the medium-term financial plan. So we need to deliver this year recurrently. And the one other issue is just around the agency staffing, where we are still seeing significant pressure, and that is another area where we'll keep the focus on. So those were just the things I particularly wanted to draw to the board's attention.
Thanks, Sarah. Deb? Anything on digital?
Oh, see, sorry.
I feel like I caught you sleeping then, didn't I? This is the benefit of being in person, not online.
There's a couple of things just to kind of flag decisions that have been taken outside because they didn't hit the value, is that we have revamped our N365, so those contracts are signed off and we're out to market for our networking capability for primary care. Ruth isn't here at the moment, but that's really positive. And also we've had some really useful conversations around technology-enabled care, which we had with the chief execs about 3 weeks ago. Joe facilitated a really helpful conversation with North Somerset, and we're looking to recruit ourselves an expert advisor to be able to support the work that's happening in the local authorities, Serona, primary care and community, not excluding acutes at all in any way, shape or form, but really focusing in on the fact that where we need to make the most significant change is in that community space. And also making sure we think about not just the older adult side of things, but we're thinking about the whole life course and where that can support children. Links into our 1001 days for children in our strategy, but making sure we link that up.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Any further questions around finance, estates or digital? No? Okay, thank you. Alison, primary care.
Thanks very much, Chair. The June minutes are here in front of you, which were approved, but Vicky's pointed out quite a important typo, not material, but important typo, so we will get those changed. But I'm giving a verbal update from the July meeting. And in line with what Ellen said, it's now a bi-monthly meeting and meeting in September. 3 main areas to report. One of them is linked to, Shane, your winter preparedness paper, the high impact priority intervention around acute respiratory hub. We saw, had a really helpful presentation on how that has gone in our system, designed to relieve pressure from ED departments. A really good example committee saw of it's a real shame John and Ruth have gone, of the collaborative board, One Care and others working together really quickly, setting something up really quickly and doing it. Around our 18,000 appointments we heard at the committee were held, and 95% face-to-face. What was good for the committee is that there was some real learning about how to go into this winter, some tweaks. What came out of the data was, depending on areas that you lived in, was who referred to there. So in areas of high deprivation, the majority of referrals were of children. In other areas, it was adults switch. So what was pleasing was that the team was starting to look at health inequalities and tweaking it for this winter. The question, which is a nice question, but it's impossible to answer, is have they made a material impact on ED? It's not quite that linear, but they're clearly having an impact, and most people were seen with reassurance plus medication, and we saw that as a really good thing that just came really quickly, worked really well, and is being tweaked for this winter. So that was really good. The second area of focus is around dental reform programme. There are enormous challenges around dentistry, which Dave might want to go into more detail on, and the board may be interested in some further detail. But we had a really good update from the regional lead about the 3 areas of focus, which is around access, oral health and workforce. Same challenges as you would see perhaps in access and workforce in other areas, but particularly around oral health. It felt to me that it was resetting itself. There's been lots of working groups, but they've paused. They're going to rethink what they're doing. So it feels like it's set up stage a little bit for me. And we will expect some updates on progress as we go on. But there's clearly some challenges, but it was great to see the regional clinical lead there. And the third area was the GPCB, General Practice Collaborative Board, and One Care 5-year strategy for general practice, which they shared with us for information. It's clearly aligned and it complements the ICS strategy. They feel if they can successfully deliver on it, it will help the objectives of the ICS. So it's connected, and it supports general practice to to be resilient and to deliver. It's split into 4 areas. Workforce is probably number 1, workload, estates and representation, where they feel that they need to be more in the decision making, in the body of the Kirk, if you like. So it's really good to see. It's quite an ambitious programme. They are setting out operational plans to sit below that, which, if they achieve everything they want to, it will be some achieve. It is ambitious. But we did commend the strategy. The questions we had mostly were around the key deliverables and the question challenge of, are the key performance indicators going to be mostly process indicators or outcome indicators, and how are they thinking around that? So there was something quite important around that. The final thing, which will be coming to board in October, is the National GP Recovery Plan and our BNSSG response to it. There are 9 indicators that we saw at committee. 3 are on green, 6 are on amber. Expecting a few to turn from amber to green by the next meeting, or even by the board. And again, this is all around stopping the 8 a.m. rush, trying to open up capacity for people in general practice. So that was that was really good to see. It's important that that recovery plan delivers for our system. Finally, there was, we know that there have been some Care Quality Commission reports published at the end of last week, which I wouldn't mind just asking Dave just to go into on a couple of practices, which committee has been cited on. And just two fine things. One, having Sarah at committee has been brilliant. For some of the really tricky issues, she just comes in and it just helps. So that's a good thing. And in terms of podiatry, pharmacy, optometry, I'm really hot, sorry. Pharmacy, optometry and dentistry.
It's always hard to remember those 3.
Oh, no, I know them
I
inside out. We should do that at committee. Dave and I have had welcome meetings with the chairs of those local committees, because it's really important. We want to set the scene. My understanding from Dave is that those people aren't round primary care committees across the land. It's not a consistent feature. We want them around the table. Yeah. We want to encourage them to be around the table. There are expectations of them being a member of being around the table. So we worked our way through 3 of the 4 committee chairs.
Optometry to go, isn't it?
No, dental to go. So that's also I think will be helpful in terms of relationship building going forward. So that was all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Alison. And our new dental school opens tomorrow, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I was going to just note that.
Yeah,
I'll
be there. I don't know who else from the board will be there. So Dave, okay. See you in the morning.
See you in the morning. So I was just going to note a couple of things building on Alison. So just focusing on dentistry, I would like to agenda an item for board towards the end of the year. We are really getting our teeth into this now. And we've arranged
Let's hope they don't stay in there.
I'll be up. Have we got news for you next week? We've got a session, a stakeholder session on this coming Monday with regional colleagues, local dentists, service users, to really think about how we shape and develop our local strategy, responding to the access, workforce and prevention areas that Alison has mentioned. Myself and Shane met with local action group on Tuesday night, and access to dentistry is a key issue for our population, and it is not where we want it to be. It's not where we want it to be here, and it's not where and it's a national issue. So we want to take the opportunity that we've got now with Delegated to really improve access for our population, and so we'll be developing that strategy out of the session starting on Monday. We are making some incremental improvements, so we have increased some access to urgent dental care, and we have been able to work with NHS colleagues in implementing further sessions of what called stabilisation sessions across the system. So we're starting to make those connections with dentists who are really keen to service the NHS, and we'll continue that work going forward. And yes, I was going to note the new dental school is opening tomorrow, and they are really keen to work with us and how that amazing facility can service NHS capacity as well. So we'll continue those discussions with them. Alison noted the CQC reports, and I just wanted to note publicly for the board, this is out in the media, but sadly 2 of our practices in the North Somerset area have been rated as inadequate and placed under special measures by the CQC. Those practices are Graham Road Surgery and Horizon Health Centre, both of which sit within what's called the Peer Health Group Limited company. The inspections were published last Friday and are available on the CQC website. These follow inspections that were made in May. These are practices that we have been working very closely with for a long time, and we've been working with the CQC in their improvement journey. Special measures means that the practices will be kept under close review by the CQC and will be re-inspected within 6 months to check progress on those improvements. We have been, Michael Richardson and Rosie's team has been leading a joint session with the practices and the CQC in tracking progress against their improvement, and we continue to support them in that journey. Just so everyone is clear, and services are continuing to be provided by the practice during this time. And staff and patients have been notified of the inspection outcomes, and all information is on their websites. As Alison has said, we have been working with these practices for some time, and we've been highlighting our ongoing work and concerns with the Primary Care Committee, and we'll continue to track progress through the Primary Care Committee. I just thought I should make the board publicly aware that those reports have been made.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any questions or comments, Chair?
Just a quickie one, because you've got the optometry, pharmacy, dentistry folks coming to the table. It would be really good to know if you're sort of liaising with those who are on the people front, because they're part of our extended system workforce, and it would be really good to connect up all the dots and see whether or not there's data flooding in or potentially flooding in from those particular groups.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, thanks for the detailed updates. Great. John?
There is no further update this month, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, so the last update is from me around the Integrated Care Partnership. We discussed some of this morning in private board, but first thing, it would be remiss of me not to say a big thank you to Colin for the effort he put into getting over the finish line the strategy, which we agreed at the last board meeting. We talked here today about how we then make sure that is delivered in practice, and there's a lot more to be done. There will be a workshop between the Integrated Care Board and the Integrated Care Partnership, so we're more joined up about our thinking about delivery of health and social care. And bringing those boards together, I think, will be quite effective. The Integrated Care Partnership, there's a huge amount of enthusiasm around the table. People are really bubbling with energy. We've got a lot of third sector engagement around the table. The chair has recently passed from Mike Bell, who's the leader of North Somerset Council. Mike did a brilliant job in the first year of creating the structures for it. And it's now passed to Helen Holland, who is the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Committee in Bristol, councillor in Bristol. She'll be chairing the Integrated Care Partnership. There's a few of us there, so myself, Shane, Colin, Joe, Rosie. Have I missed anyone who doesn't attend the ICP?
We've got a representative.
Of course, yeah. I know Health Watch are there, but actually people who are sat around the table. And then a lot of you, your chairs or leaders are there as well. So our organisations are represented there. Shane, you're there with me. Is there anything else around the ICP that we haven't covered that you think might be useful?
No, I just still think we're trying to really get the best relationship with the voluntary community and faith sector and how they get involved in delivery, not just in planning. So I think that's the bit we still really got to drive hard on. But I concur with your view about enthusiasm. They certainly don't lack enthusiasm. We've just got to work out how we bottle that and get it in the right direction and strategy.
Okay, thanks. Any questions around the Integrated Care Partnership? No, thank you. We haven't got any questions tabled from members of the public. I'm also conscious it's 30 degrees and I'm looking around the room and people are melting. Just give me 2 seconds. So we won't spend as long as we might normally do on this element, and then I can talk about where we are for the board next time. So yes, thank you. By all means, I'm happy to give you the floor. If we can't answer the question here, we will report it back in writing.
I don't think you've got any answers for me in any case. The annual report's been produced. Will there be a public AGM this year? And if there is, when and where?
So we're not, as an integrated care board, we're not required to have an AGM. We were going to have the AGM today, and then we've had some conversation around it. So the advice is now that we probably won't hold an AGM this year.
Correct.
So, I don't think there's a requirement for us to do it. Is there anything that your observations around that might be useful?
No, I think there ought to be, honestly, but that's not. I don't feel terribly strongly about it, one way or another. The next little bit is on page 45 of the report. On the top of it, it says achieving net zero carbon by 20,230, which is 18,207 years away.
20,000 years.
I think it.
Well, I mean,
I don't think you really meant that.
Yeah, I think that does sound like it's probably a typo in the because it should be 2030. I mean
you approved the revised green plan at the last meeting, and I've since then spent some time studying the variation between the two issues, and I'm rather disappointed by what I found. I was hoping we were going to make some progress, but it doesn't really look like very much. In particular, we don't seem to have established the carbon footprint for this area. When I've looked at other people's plans, they've done that, and it's quite critical in the exercise of trying to reduce this to zero by 2030 that this should be done.
I think it's a fair challenge. Sarah, I don't know whether you've got a view on that.
Brian, it'd be really helpful if you've seen something somewhere else that you think is good practice, that you'd share that with me.
Well, we've been trying to communicate, but I must say that I've not been very successful. So that's why I've really come here today. Because the plan doesn't see. I worked in an industry where it was very complex. We did lots of things and lots of people in it. And we had a plan and we all relied on one another to make sure it happened. To me, it would appear in the new system, the ICB have got a big responsibility to produce the combined carbon plan. And there doesn't seem to be anything in the plans to how that should be done. Because virtually all of the work's going to have to be done outside the ICB's area, because the ICB's carbon footprint's probably quite small. I mean, it would be the hospitals, I would imagine, are by far the biggest producers. And so they're going to have to do this, but there doesn't seem to be any formal organisation of how all this is going to be handled. In my day, we used to have what were called critical path analysis charts, and every month it was reviewed by one of the senior people and made sure that everybody was actually doing what they were supposed to be doing. And I would imagine we ought to have something like that. I'm now in my 87th year, you see, so I shan't be here very much longer. But when I look round at the way the world's changing at a rapid rate now, I think this issue is going to come higher up the agenda. And we can do our little bit. We won't make a big hot difference to it, but at least we will have tried.
So, Sarah, do you want to comment on that point about the coordination of the role of the ICB? Yeah. And Brian, don't put yourself down. You could be here for another 10 or 20 years. You say you won't be here much longer, but you could be here for a long time to come. And I think your contributions here are always very useful. So, Sarah?
So, you're right. The ICB as an organisation only has a small element to play, but it is that bigger bit about bringing together all of the partners. And you'll know that it's actually North Bristol Trust that employ the person that leads, Sam Willits, on behalf of the system. And we have a Green Plan Steering Group, which Glyn Howells, who's the Director of Finance of MBT, who chairs that on behalf of the system, but all of the system partners are there. And Brian, I'd really like to open an invitation to you to come and attend that, because there's often, like last month, we had a really good update from the prescribing team about the work that's going on to reduce the carbon in our prescribing. That's one element of the plan, but there are regularly deep dives into those different areas to understand what's going on. But you're absolutely right, it's it's different places. There are different elements of that carbon reduction that need to happen, but a lot of it in our hospitals.
And I think your challenge is most welcome as well, because if we don't get that challenge, we don't make the changes. So that offer is there. So really appreciate it. Okay, ladies and gents, any other business? Anything else we haven't covered? So, okay, just remains me to say thank you for your persistence today. It's been very warm. I think we've covered a huge amount of ground. There's been some really testing conversations, but you can see how we're developing more as a board. Our next meeting is back here on the 5th of October. I can't promise it won't be 30 degrees, but
I suspect it won't.
I'd hazard a guess it won't be, but you never know with these things. So we are back here, but between now and keep yourself safe, and thanks very much for your attendance today.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, yeah.